So I'm very honored to introduce this next company. They are a startup, and we've got two colleagues from the company. This is an interesting, I don't know if anyone had an opportunity to actually play with it last night in the activation. So this is about monitoring your brain and how your brain changes when you're listening to sound or music. There's a lot of studies being conducted right now from many reputable institutions around what this means to health and wellness, and also how it also affects the employee, as well as ourselves as individuals, from an employee engagement perspective, retention, and overall wellness programs. This is an opportunity for companies to perhaps offer employees something that might help with just overall health and wellness, as Jason talked about. There's some serious paradigm shifts happening with regards to employee expectations on their employer and their environments, and this is one, I believe, that could potentially affect that in a very positive way. So with that said, I'm going to introduce first one of the co-founders of this company, besides Michael Herman, is Peter Gabriel, the musician, humanitarian, who needs no introduction in many circles. Peter's going to talk to us. It is recorded, it's not live, but he left us a recorded message, and he'll introduce the colleagues from Reverberation. So with that, Peter Gabriel.
Hi everyone, I'm Peter Gabriel, and I'm sitting in Sardinia at the moment, wishing you all well. I'm sorry I can't be out in Deer Valley with you. I grew up in a dairy farm some time ago, and my dad was an inventor, and he built his own system to play music to his cows whenever they were being milked. It made them much more productive. Funnily enough, music can also make us a whole lot more productive, particularly if we find the sounds that we personally respond to. Scientists have shown us, and some of this we've detailed in the Reverberation book, that using music at work can play many different roles to make us better at what we do. For example, music seems to have the power to spawn creativity, to connect us better to co-workers, to clients, and as you know, sound can entrain the brain to help us really focus. Reverberation was created to provide us with our own musical toolkit that would allow us to do all sorts of things much better. Music has been used in so many ways in the past, say with athletes to improve performance, with armies going into battle, to achieve spiritual or trance states, or for men and women to seduce and fall in love with those they are interested in. All this knowledge and experience can be translated also into our work lives. I've always been fascinated by the potential power of music, and recently was blown away to learn that a frequency of 40 hertz has been shown to fend off Alzheimer's. And there's a couple of physics students who've shown how sound waves can actually be used to put out wildfires. I want personally to thank Richard Entrup and the KPMG team for including us and giving us an opportunity to share some of all this in a lot more detail. And I'll turn over to the Reverberation co-founder, Michael Herman, and our colleague, Indre Viscontis, to take it from here.
All right, I have a confession. I'm Terry Stewart, and I'm a recovering management consultant. I recently joined the Reverberation team as the Chief Innovation Officer, and I'm very excited to have with me Dr. Indre Viscontis, who is a PhD neuroscientist in this whole area and specializes in the impact of music on our brains, and also a world-class opera singer. All right, so how many of you were able to try the activation last night? Anybody's brains? Okay, there we go, we got a few. So this is what your brain on music looks like. So we are doing an activation. It's gonna be on again tonight after the sessions are over. And you just put on an EEG cap measuring 20 different channels, and we actually visualize real time what's going on in your brain. So we searched high and wide across the audience, and we came up with Richard Entrup, and this is in fact Richard's brain yesterday on music. So, how many of you have actually seen your brains and the actual activations live before? Anybody? Other than last night. Anybody? Nobody. So this is one of the things, our brains are hidden from us, right? And yet they're such an important part of who we are, how we operate when we get sick, how they deal with all of that. So we're going to get into what reverberation is all about. First and foremost, you heard Peter talking about reverberation, and reverberation is Peter Gabriel, Anna Gabriel, and Michael Herman, and they took 3 years of neuroscience and created this book called Do Everything Better with Music, and it's basically a playbook for life based on neuroscience. So how do you focus? How do you actually relax and sleep? How do you connect? How do you create? How do you escape? And so we're going to get into a little bit of that today, and we'll make sure to bring it back to the corporate world because there's a lot of corporate folks here, investors, startups, et cetera. This has the opportunity to fundamentally change how you engage with your employees and your leaders within, and your clients for that matter, within your organization. So let's talk about that. All right. And I'm going to go through the slides pretty quick because I want to get into a live conversation with Indre. And please, again, go into the app and ask us questions because we will try and leave some time. So what we know with the research that we've done, music can boost your productivity, can help you negotiate, present, and interview better because it can set your brain state in the right manner so that you can actually connect and think faster. Can help you or your kids, by the way. This is a multi-dimensional presentation. We're going to hit you with things that you can use in your company and also can take home with your family. So you can help your kids study and organize more efficiently. Bonding, we talked a little bit about connectivity earlier today, but bonding with your coworkers, and this is one in the world that I was living in, one of the number one challenges we faced as leaders was connecting with the team. So attracting the talent, retaining the talent, and being able to have them be productive because they're connected. So ultimately better leader, more productive teams, et cetera. What is Reverberation trying to do through this? So Reverberation is kind of a unique, and if you go to our website, reverberation.co, not .com, .co, you'll see it's got a little different vibe, and it's the genesis of scientists and artists. So we're trying to bridge those two worlds. And so what we've done is actually 4 different kinds of core things: media projects, groundbreaking technology. Imagine if you got up and brushed your teeth in the morning and songs were playing that you liked and it woke up your parasympathetic nervous system so you're ready for your day. Not so bad. How many of you listened to music when you got up this morning? Decent amount, by the way. Super helpful to do it, and it gets you ready for the day, sets the tone around the cortisol that you've got running around, etc. But also, how do we actually think about using music and that toothbrush again, playing different music when you're going to bed that actually resets your parasympathetic nervous system and gets you prepared for sleep? How many of you have some challenges with sleep? Don't sleep your average 7 or 8. Yeah, so thinking about a routine, if we can build those routines and use music intentionally, suddenly we can have a real impact on our life. And it's one of the big challenges with kids as well. They're staying up late, they're on their devices, and they're not sleeping well, and that affects how they perform at school. We're very focused, this is part of the reason I joined the company, on educational programs. So both youth education, so bringing programs into high schools, after school program for high schools, so that kids could learn how to do all those things I just talked about, relaxing, focusing, connecting, et cetera. And also into corporate programs. Indre, let's talk a little bit about increasing connectivity and solving some workplace problems.
Yeah, so it's a really exciting time to be a neuroscientist who's interested in creativity and music. When I was doing my PhD, if you told someone that you were interested in creativity, you would not get a job. It was just not considered hard science. It wasn't considered rigorous. And about 10 years ago, we formed a society of researchers interested in the neuroscience of creativity, and I just became the president. And if you look, back to Salim's keynote, it's a hockey stick in terms of the number of published papers.
Yeah, exponential curve, right? Yeah.
Sorry, we're Canadian, so hockey stick is what we know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's this exponential rise in the neuroscience of creativity, but even more dramatic is the rise in number of publications related to music and health and how it impacts us. So it's a really key, important time right now where now there's we just got a $2 million grant from the NSF to study creativity. So this is a really exciting time for the work. And if you'll forgive the Peter Gabriel reference, I think up until now, a lot of us think of music as a sledgehammer. Music will make you do X.
Great
music,
song, though, by the way.
Music makes you smarter. Music does this and that does that. And the truth is it's not a sledgehammer. It's a Swiss Army knife. It's a precision tool. And it is, we know how subjective music is. You and I can listen to the same piece of music, and when we look at our brain, with now all these new real-time techniques to analyze, which are all AI-based, we can actually see the differences. And we now know as neuroscientists where those differences come from. There are key critical periods in our lives where those differences get developed. But that means that when you're applying this as a tool, especially at work, you need to be very strategic about it. And so it's not just a matter of, okay, play music at work. We know that's not going to work. So that's what I'm excited now about, partnering with Reverberation to really bring this science that has exploded to a practical application.
Well, Andrea, I wonder if you could share what you had shared with me previously around some of the work you're doing around preparing kids for university.
Yeah. So during COVID, a lot of SAT, they got shut down. So there was a whole cohort of students who couldn't take their SATs. And so universities couldn't use them in their application process. But then a couple years later, a lot of these universities were like, we need to go back to the SATs because we don't have really good measures of whether these students will be successful in college. It turns out that we do actually have those measures. There's creativity elements that we can pull out of their application essays using an AI and a machine learning algorithm that we've developed that can rate a particular college essay for its creativity. But that's just an example of how we can apply some of these tools now. Now imagine in your hiring process, if you could have one of these tools that could predict which of your employees is going to come up with that next creative, innovative idea in a robust way that also helps with some diversity issues.
Yeah, and one of the things that with Reverberation we're trying to break down is this notion of your kids go through school and they go either into the tech and the science side. I'm an engineer, by the way, I went down that path. Or they go into the arts. And what we now know with the neuroscience is if you actually have science and you're using music, whether it's learning an instrument, singing in a choir, or any of those kinds of things, you're actually lighting up more parts of your brain that actually build that cognitive muscle. So just like if you wanted to run a marathon or you want to do other things, you're going to be working on your legs, working on your arms, etc. If we're going to be performing intellectual exercises, we need to be lighting up all the parts of our brain. And we now know that the arts, and in specific, from our perspective, music helps do that. So lots of different things, and we rhymed off a few of these earlier, but cooperation, joyful music enhances your attentional processing, so people learn better. We aren't measuring all you guys with EEGs today, but because we had some good music on before you stood up, hopefully you're going to be listening and asking some really good questions of us.
Can I jump in and unpack that a little bit? So one of the, you've probably heard about the Mozart effect, this idea that listening to Mozart makes you smarter. It's not true. Listening to Mozart instead of listening to relaxation tapes while you're doing these cognitive tests makes you more awake. So it's an arousal effect in that original Mozart study. But what does, it seems, have a long-lasting effect is actually trying to learn to play a musical instrument or sing, in a kind of meaningful way. And what we find over the course of a number of studies is that the actual skills that are enhanced in that kind of training are executive functioning skills. They're the skills we need to get things done. Strategic planning, focus, delayed gratification, etc. So that component of the musical training has a dose-response curve. That means the more you do it, the more benefits we can see in the brain. So, but what I think this approach of like, well, music, shows up like in this kind of static, activates your whole brain. Pardon me. What I think that misses out on is the dynamism of brain activity. So it's not like when you're sitting at work, you have to be in the same brain state for an entire hour. You actually want to fluctuate between brain states depending on the task that you're doing, or even within a task. And that's one of the great things that music can help you do. It can help you switch between these brain states in a way that is more robust than just trying harder. Often when we want to have a new creative idea, we actually need to let our minds wander in a productive way, not by doom scrolling, and get out of the fixated thought that is blocking all these good ideas from coming. And that's actually a great use for music or a walk out in nature, etc. And one of the things that learning, even badly, how to play a musical instrument, especially if there's an improvisational component, what it does is it teaches your brain to strategically switch between which network is in control of your thinking, whether it's executive control or this mind-wandering network.
So there's still hope for my really bad ukulele?
Yes. In fact, the more difficult it is, actually the more benefit you're going to gain.
On a serious note, though, some of you will follow flow research and how to get into flow states. And there's a lot of research now coming. If you track Stephen Kotler and the Flow Research Collective, they've studied if you get into flow state, it's about 90 minutes is kind of the optimal amount of time in a flow state, and you need 30 minutes to recuperate and recover from that. And it's not 30 minutes to go check email, to go do a bunch of calls. It's 30 minutes of actually taking your brain off of those cognitive load exercises, and listening to music is actually part of that. So there's music during activities, and then there's actually using music for recovery, and the science is quite compelling on that. So we took a look at your musical brain on business. And so how does music, or could music get employed? If you look at your entire day, so getting up in the morning, you wake up, what kind of music can you use to energize, exercise? This is fascinating. What kind of exercise? Are you stretching? Are you doing yoga? Are you doing weightlifting? Are you doing cardio exercises? And depending on what your age is, your target heart rate is different. So let me actually just improvising here quickly. So for example, let's look at this audience. Let's go 40s. Okay, if you're stretching and you're roughly 45, 92 beats per minute is the right kind of target. If you're weightlifting for that same 45-year-old, 108.
You know what, this brings up a really good point, is that we tend to get stuck in our musical taste as we get older. The truth is that in order to be more creative, you need to be open to new experiences. And getting into a different musical genre, however uncomfortable it might be in the beginning, is actually a really great way to do that.
What we have found through the neuroscience is if you're using the right music, any cyclists in the crowd? Cyclist, rotor, yeah. So if you're using the right music, you know you can pedal a bit faster, you can pedal a bit longer. What was amazing in the research is if you're using the right music, you actually use 7% less oxygen. So let's just process that for a second. It's not about my brain going, I can keep going, right? I can be strong and resilient and whatever. But it's actually about how my physiology works because of the music coming into my body and how my brain processes it. So these are things that when I discovered it, working with Michael and Anna and Peter and the team about 6 months ago, I'm like, whoa, we're on that knee of the curve where we're finding unbelievable things where we can use this resource that is basically free to us to actually fundamentally change how we live and how much we enjoy life. So that was exercise. Shower time. We're going to do a big experiment with thousands of people singing in the shower. You know, stay tuned for that one. Commuting to work. A lot of people get stressed whether they're riding the subway and public transit, or they're actually driving, or they're even walking. They get stressed thinking about coming into work, and even on the other side, coming home from work. So how do you use music in that context? On the job, and there's a whole section that we're building out in our corporate offering that has on the job. Are you preparing for a one-on-one performance review with somebody? Are you doing a team huddle on the new product that you're launching? Are you doing deep dive work where you're coding or you're doing some creative stuff? So lots of stuff there. Lunchtime, commuting home. Many stressors in families are caused by people not separating their work environment from their home environment. And what we've learned, again with some neuroscience, is if you come out of the workday and you're a little bit stressed, what you actually need to do is there's something called the ISO principle, which is you need to start listening to music that's closer to the stress level that you're at, and then gradually migrate yourself, because your body and your brain will be shocked if you go, stress, stress, stress. Oh, it doesn't work. And so there's some interesting things on how you get home. And then sleep is, fundamental for all of us. So we've done a whole bunch of work using scientists and artists. Somebody was asking me tonight, where are we in this curve? We're leveraging AI, so a lot of topics today about AI. This is not about AI-generated music. How many of you have albums and turntables at home? Oh yeah, those of you that don't, get back into it. Super fun, put them on with the family, get back into the discovery. But if you start to do that, then you're gonna be able to live a better life. And so that's the hypothesis that we have.
Can I jump in on one?
Please.
So I did this visioning workshop for synthetic biologists at the University of California who were trying to create a new institute. And this was a group of academics who were not particularly socially bonded. Academics often are in competition with one another. So this was an environment that was really tough, because we had to talk about, what was the institute going to be about, what are going to be the goals, how are we going to get funding, and are we going to, et cetera. And one of the things that they responded afterwards that they really enjoyed was the fact that I played music whenever we were going through these visioning sessions strategically, and I chose the music. And I was kind of democratic about it, but it was very mindfully chosen. And one of the things I think that it allowed people to do was, first, they could bond over whether they liked it or hated it. But it was still something that changed the tenor of the room and the mood, and it lifted it up and it got them into this phase. One of the things we're learning in the neuroscience of creativity is that group brainstorming generally fails. There are times when you come together back as a group, but just shooting around ideas can be really, really problematic. And in fact, if you have those same individuals in their own rooms, they come up with more and better ideas. So visioning how to do that brainstorming strategically is now a big area of research, and we've made some real strides. But the role that music plays in that, I think, is understudied and underknown. It's a really ripe area for research. But one of the things that we do know about how music works in social bonding is that when you bounce a baby in sync with the music, the baby develops more pro-social attachment to you. So when the experimenter accidentally drops their pencils, experimenters do this all the time, the baby will be more likely to help you pick those up, if you bounce them in sync versus if you bounce them out of sync. They see you as a stranger. So that synchronization is already built in. We even know the hormones that are involved. So oxytocin is an attachment hormone. It is related to synchronizing different parts of your brain and synchronizing our behavior one to another.
So 3 things to take away, though. Music can help make hard things easier. So we're all in the business of time to competency for our employees and our leaders, right? And so music can help you prepare for learning, do the learning, and then recall the learning. Do learning, and then recall the learning after.
Prepare for learning, that's the Mozart effect, right? It's arousal. Music is multiply represented in different brain networks. It gets the whole brain going. Learning, we all know it's a great mnemonic. How did you learn your ABCs? You learn to sing them. Also because it's multiple representation. And recall, when you're trying to find the information, you need multiple cues. Music is a multimodal cueing superpower.
Excellent. Social bonding. The second one, we've talked a bunch about team building and all of that. And the last one was creativity. In the world of uncertainty that we're dealing with, creativity is going to be one of the competitive differentiators for all of our companies. And on creativity, music can help us crank up our different brain networks, right?
Yeah, that's right, and bring us from one to another. And it also can open us up to new ideas, not only in terms of the way it's such a rich stimulus, it's a super stimulus, right? It has all these different components to it, which is one of the reasons I think people say it activates your whole brain. But it's because it activates all these different networks at the same time. And so that's one of the ways in which it can boost creativity. And also, to be creative, this myth of the depressed genius creative is a myth. Most people who are at their most creative tend to be in a slightly more positive mood as opposed to a negative mood.
So those are the big ones on our list. And then the simple ones for yourselves and your family. Indre talked about it. Learn an instrument. And even if it's a xylophone or a guitar, literally ukulele is fantastic. Get the band together. A bunch of organizations are building bands into their employee engagement model. So get a band together at the workplace and have them connect, because that will be the emotional bond that they have, and they will associate your company with it, even though it's not work-related. And then Indre talked about it. Use music in your meetings, build it in, have fun. We're allowed to have fun and work hard and deliver all the results. Your employees will be more productive.
One last one, have a listening party with your teenage kids, if you have any, because it actually improves relationships between parents and their teen kids, and it has all these other benefits. But intentionally listen together.
Yes.
or with your colleagues.